All right, 8th grade students of Wake Forest and Clemson. I am your math teacher, Mr. Field, and we are going to get started. I'm going to put on a 15-minute timer so that I don't take too long because I have a lot to say about what we're going to do, but I want to help break you into a process that will help me encourage you to give me your best effort all the time. And so this way, the way we're going to do things, you won't have to sit and wait and say, I already know this, but you're always going to be able to come as prepared as you can be and come with your questions. So the way we're going to do that is I'm going to give you 3 assignments before I teach them to you. And you're not responsible for mastering them until after we go through your questions and I teach you, but you are responsible for trying them. And in addition to trying them, you're going to watch a video of me doing some examples. So you're not going in cold, but you are going to learn as much as you can from the video that I make and the Khan Academy. So this is the first assignment, and your goal for day 1 is right here. So please write that down at the top of your paper. Goal for day 1, no blue start buttons at the end of the first day of school. And that would be, just add to that. In Khan Academy. So we use Khan Academy. Did I spell that right? Let me show you Khan Academy. So here's khanacademy.org, and you go to courses, and you click on 8th grade, and you'll see all the content. But after you join our class, you won't do that. You'll go to your name, and you'll go to Learner Home. And then when you click on, you'll have a class here after you join it, and you will have assignments right in the middle of this. Right now it says 5th grade arithmetic for some reason for me, but it won't say that for you. All right, and your goal is to do the assignments. So let's talk about how to do them. The first thing is don't freak out. All right, this is a question that you probably don't know how to do, but here's what I don't want you to communicate to me. I don't want you to say, this makes no sense. I have no idea how to do this. I'm so lost. So go ahead and don't do that. All right, what I do want you to do is click the Get a Hint button, and I want you to read through the hints. Okay, so let's first of all read the problem. Select the decimal that is equivalent to 111 over 250. So I already have the hints here. A rational number in the form of a fraction can be represented as a decimal by dividing the numerator by the denominator. For example, this is how we get 0.75. And then we see right here, they put the 4 on the outside and the 3 on the inside. And why? Because they said divide the numerator by the denominator. Okay. So, right here is a great place for you to have questions. I already have some questions written. You could ask me, Mr. Field, what is a rational number? Or you could say, it says to represent a rational number as a decimal, we divide the numerator by the denominator. Is it always that way? That shows me that you're reading the hints and trying to understand them. Or when you look at this work, you could look at it and say, I don't understand what they're doing. Why are they putting zeros after the 3? That would be a good question. Or you could say, I think they're putting zeros after the 3 so they can divide 4 into 30. Is that correct? Okay, so both of those show me that you're trying to understand this. Okay, and then here we have the answer. So your hints will go all the way to the answer. And so we know the answer is 0.444. So if you were the non-thinking student, you could just check that and move on with your life. But then you wouldn't be able to do the next one. So don't try to cheat. Don't try to do any shortcuts, because this whole Khan Academy is about learning. And I'm giving you a learning tool, and now you need to learn to use it responsibly. And I'll know, if you don't, it's just not going to help you. And I will still get paid. So, all right. So let's work together. So 111 out of 250. Let me go ahead and do that right here. I'm going to start from the beginning. So we know that we put the 250 on the outside. We put the 111 on the inside. Okay, so denominator on the outside, numerator on the inside. That's what it said, right? Okay, so now 250 does not divide into 111. That's a bigger number. So what we do is we put a decimal point, we put a 0. And now we say, how many times does 250 go into 1,110? And we know the answer to that is 4. We could do our times tables over to the side to figure that out if we didn't know the answer was 4. So these are the first 5 multiples of 250. And we are going to use calculators this year, but for now, just take your calculator and take the batteries out. Don't forget about it. All right, because the more you use a calculator, the less you'll be able to do things without a calculator. We want to still be able to talk to each other without a calculator. So 4 times 250 is 1,000. Okay, now when I do long division, I subtract. And I get 110. So now 250, how many times does that go into 210? Well, it doesn't. So I add another 0. And now I say, how many times does 250 go into 1,100? And that again is 4. And that's 4 times 250 is 1,000. Subtract, and now I get 100. Okay, so how many times does 250 go into 100? All right, I need to add another 0 because that's too small. All right, how many times does 250 go into 1,000? It goes into it exactly 4 times. Okay. So I got all the way to a remainder of 0, and now I know that 111 over 250 is equal to 0.444. All right, so this is called a terminating decimal. There's another question. The terminating, it says since the remainder is 0, it's a terminating decimal. So if you asked me what a terminating decimal is, I would assume that you didn't read that it says since the remainder is 0, this is a terminating decimal. So make sure that you ask questions that show that you did your reading, that you read everything. Don't ask a bad question. Although I'll take what you can give me and we'll work from there. So a good question would be, what is a non-terminating decimal? Or maybe you could say, what are some other characteristics besides a 0 remainder of a terminating decimal? Or maybe one last question. Can you further explain what a terminating decimal is? So you might be like, all right, there's a remainder of 0, but I really could use more of an explanation than that. And that's okay. All right. If I didn't spell that right, then we're just going to leave it. Okay, so there we go. So that is an example for writing fractions as repeating decimals, although, as you can see, there's also terminating decimals. So what about repeating decimals, right? Well, the thing is, you're going to use the same process, whether the fraction repeats or terminates, you're going to put the denominator. And now here's another thing that we do in our class. We take the work and we process it, which means I'm going to now go back and I'm going to write that this is the denominator. And I'm going to write that this was the numerator. So I'm annotating my notes, all right? And this is long division. And we're also in class going to write success criteria. And so I'll explain more about what that is, but we'll do that in class. Okay, so let's just go through the examples. But what I'm showing you with this red text is that we have the work, and now we want to go back and we want to mark up the work so that we understand it more, and we're showing that we do. Okay, and so of course we can squiggly cloud our final answer, right? All right, so there's 2 more assignments, but now that we did all that, shouldn't take as long. Okay, so the other thing is to take a decimal and go backwards and make it into a fraction. So in that first assignment, we're taking a fraction and we're putting it into a decimal, but now we're going to go backwards. And not only that, but we're going to talk about repeating decimals into fractions. So in 7th grade, you should have taken non-repeating decimals and turned them into fractions. And so how do you do that? Let's just review that. So if we have something like, decimal. So we have something like 0.15. How do you take that and write it as a fraction? Well, you should be able to say that this is not 0.15. This is 15 hundredths, right? So then we write 15 over 100. And we could reduce from there. And then we would have our reduced fraction, but at least this is a fraction. So I'm just going to leave it like that. All right, so, but how about repeating decimals? So this little bar means that the 6 goes on and on and on forever. So this is actually 3.1666666 and dot, 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 on and on forever. Okay, so how do we write it as a fraction? Let's read the hints, okay? So remember that the first time you do the Khan Academy assignments, I already said it, I'm saying it again. I want you to read through all the hints that it gives you. I want you to watch my video, and I want you to try as best you can. Whatever score you get on the assignments, that's where we start when you get to class, okay? You're either going to come with 100%, you're going to come with a 75 or a 50 or a 25, you might come with a 0%. All of those are fine before we talk about it in class. What is not fine? Blue start buttons that show that you're coming to class and you haven't tried at all. So I'm giving you this video. I'm giving you the Khan Academy assignment, and we're even going to talk about the organizer, which is a place where we're all going to ask our questions, okay? So let's focus again on reading these hints and coming up with good questions so that you don't say things like, this makes no sense. I have no idea. I'm so lost. All right, so I'm not going to reach my 15-minute time. That's okay. All right, so let x equal the decimal. Set up 2 equations such that the digits after the decimal are identical. Okay, so it's possible that you could ask a question like this. You know, hint number 1 here. You could say, I need help understanding how to make the decimal points equal, you know, something like that. that shows me like, I'm reading it, but I really don't understand what they're saying. Okay, so but let's read it together here. 100x equals 3.16 or 316.6666. 10x equals 31.6666. So look at the numbers after the decimal. They're equal. There's 4 sixes. And look at the numbers before the decimal. 316 and 31. Okay. And it says subtract the two equations. So what happened is we have the repeating part of this decimal. And we want the repeating part to be behind the decimal only. So what we don't want to be behind the decimal is this 1. So how do you move a decimal point? You multiply by 10 or 100 or 1000. And every time you multiply a number, so for example, if I have the number 1.7 and I multiply it by 10, now that makes it the number 17, because multiplying by 10 moves the decimal point to the right? And so what we're doing here is we're multiplying by 10 in order to move the decimal point so that only the repeating part is behind the decimal. So let me just say, if I have 3.16 repeating, so I'm going to say, all right, I want to move the decimal point over so that it's 31.6 repeating. That way, only the repeating part is behind the decimal. This is our number, so we're going to call that x. So if that's x, then 31.6 with the decimal moved 1 to the right would be 10x. And now if I make 100x, how many times would I move the decimal point? To make 100x, I would move it 2 times. 1, 2. So what would that give me? That would give me 316. But remember, the 6 with the bar means that it keeps going on. So that's 316.6 repeating. Okay, and now, like it says, we subtract the two equations. So really, I should write 10x equals 31.6 repeating. So we subtract and we get 90x equals, and notice when we subtract those two numbers, they both have 6 repeating behind the decimal, so we can just get rid of it. And 316 minus 31 is 285. And then you just divide. Okay. So one thing I forgot to say is after I did the first example, what you should do is pause the video and try that assignment. And then start the video again and watch me do the next example. Then pause the video and try the assignment. Okay. So you should pause the video and try this assignment. And then we'll do this one. Okay. So I don't know if you paused the video, but I hope so. So now this last one here is the same type of thing as the first one, only now everything's behind the decimal. But we only want the repeating part to be behind the decimal. So let's call that number x, 0.580. Now 2 numbers are repeating. But still, if we make it 10x, then that would move the decimal to the right. And then we would add the 5 in front and then the 80 in the back. And now to get an identical thing, because there's 2 numbers in the pattern, you have to add 2 zeros more to make 1000x. And then, yeah, so moving it 3 times, put it right here, and remember 80, 80. So depending on how many numbers are in your pattern, depends on how many zeros you're going to need to get equivalent things behind the decimal. So if we move it 3 times, that's going to make 580.80. Okay, then we subtract, so we get 990x, and then 575, and then we divide. And then x equals 575 over 990. All right, so that probably, does that reduce? I think it probably does. Yeah, 115 over 198. But I'm going to be big on no calculators for these assignments. So if you get this far and you don't reduce it, but you do all the math good, then you'll be good to go. All right, so now try this assignment. And any questions, you're going to need to gather your questions, and we're going to put them in something called an organizer. But for now, let's just do the assignments and come to class tomorrow with no blue start buttons. And then tomorrow we'll talk about the organizer. Bye, guys.